Welcome everybody to this Channel Vision Magazine webinar featuring our good friend C3 Complete. Today, we're going to specifically explore how a partner or agent can maximize their cloud services revenue and accelerate business growth by leveraging C3 Complete. I'm your moderator, Brady Hicks, the digital editor for Channel Vision. Joining us today, we have the founder and the CEO of C3 Complete, Rick Mancinelli. How you doing, Rick?
Hello, everybody.
Now, before we jump in, I just want to remind everybody that during the webinar, if you have any questions, there's a Q&A icon there at the bottom of the page. You can use that to interact with us, ask any questions that you have. We'll follow up the presentation with a Q&A. So after all of that, you will want to stay tuned throughout because C3 is presenting an exclusive offer. One lucky winner will take home a $100 Amazon gift card for staying through the entire presentation. All right, Rick, that's it from my end. I'm going to kick it over to you.
Well, thank you, everybody, for being here. It's really great to be with everybody and take a few minutes here to talk about how we can all hopefully work together and maximize some of your earnings around cloud and other IT related services. So some of the things that we'll go through today, obviously a couple of quick introductions, short overview of the cloud and IT services markets, a little refresh on who the major players are, who some of the alternative options might be, and then we'll dig into, really how to maximize those earnings and have some conversations around demonstrable results. After that, we'll finish up with some Q&A. I'm happy to stay, as long as it takes. So I'm here for you, and hopefully you guys can find some value and enjoy the content. So again, my name is Rick Mancinelli, CEO here at C3 Complete. I've got, I said 30 plus because I stopped counting, years in the IT and telecom market. I'll give you a hint. I go back as far as payphones, international callback, things like that. So I've always been a staunch channel partner advocate. Really believe in the channel. I've spent my formative years on the other side with you all, so it's great to be on this side here, and hopefully helping you out, generate some additional revenue and new customers and things like that. So I am first and foremost an engineer at heart. I jokingly say I'm an executive by chance. My initial intention was to be an independent consultant, and here we are all these years later with a pretty incredible team and multiple offices and data centers and presence across the U.S. So I also say that I'm a cloud services practitioner by accident. Kind of a long story, but we in the early 2000s had a break-fix IT company, and we were also doing some software development back then. And obviously, we sold off that software development group in around 2005, went back to our core competencies, and around 2007, 2008, those of you that have been around for a while remember the market kind of melted down. We had a particular customer who had a need for some new equipment. It was a challenging time for leasing and finance companies because the secondary markets had dried up. And so I approached him and said, hey, we have some spare equipment here. I can rent you some space on it using this new thing called VMware. Who knows if it'll ever catch on, but at least it'll get you through the short patch. And so we did that, and everything worked. And unbeknownst to us, he went and told a bunch of other folks what we had done for him. And 5 or 6 of those down the road, we discovered that we were in the hosting business. So again, that's kind of how we ended up there. That was back in 2007, 2008. So a little bit about C3 Complete. We are 6 major areas of services: information security, global connectivity, managed services, cloud services, voice and collab, and network engineering. Some of that may overlap with some of what y'all do, it likely does, and that's fine. Our mantra has always been that we are here to complete your portfolio, not to compete with your portfolio. And so I've been on the unfortunate other side of that equation once or twice, where I've had so-called partners attempt to compete with us or otherwise stick their hands in our pockets, and a very unpleasant experience. So, we have always, made it a core mission that that will never happen here. So, again, we are here as a resource to help you in any of these areas that will hopefully help you deliver a full solution to your client base. So where we are, we're based here in South Florida, headquarters in Delray Beach. We've got some satellite offices here throughout the Southeast, as well as one in San Juan. We're currently hosting in data centers in Florida, Nevada, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and we are currently exploring opportunities for Northern New Jersey and Dallas to round out sort of a national footprint. So, what's the case for selling cloud and IT services? Well, I think it's pretty significant. A lot of us grew up in this market selling various telco services, and current research indicates that the IT spend is about $4 to $5 for every $1 of telecom spend. On the cloud services side, for every $1 of cloud services spend, there's another $5 to $6 in services spend. Right. So when you put all this stuff together, you start to see the bigger picture, and you say, "Well, geez, I think we really need to be in this space." And the point here is that the customers, whether they're small and medium business or enterprise or government or schools, they're buying these solutions. So the question is, are you selling them? And if you're not, then there's a good chance that someone else is going to sell those services to your client and potentially also bring along some of the things that you're currently selling, right? So the idea here is that by rounding out your portfolio, you protect your base, and you sell a more complete solution rather than just a point solution. The challenges to being in the cloud space or IT space in general are pretty significant. Okay, if you've grown up around telecom, cloud and IT services are a more difficult sell. Right, I think we all remember the days of just picking the appropriate SKU or SKUs and cobbling together a solution. But here in this space, it's a little bit different. The most profitable sales are ICB, individual case basis. They're not SKU based. So it requires some time and effort on the front end to really get to know what the client's needs are, what their big challenges are, and how best you can go about solving those problems. It requires a bit more knowledge or a partner that's willing to co-sell with you. And as we've learned, there's not really a lot of those. There's a lot of partners that claim to be partners that just really want to push whatever it is, that they're going to derive the highest margin from. The better approach, in our opinion, is to really focus on the customer, deliver that solution up front, and then you'll derive additional revenue down the road. Again, in the IT and cloud services space, the resale programs can be really tough to navigate. There are lots of requirements and moving targets in terms of revenue and certifications and things of that nature. So some of those programs have a real high barrier to entry. You're required to have a certain number of certified, engineers, some, certified sales, some certified technical sales, and so on. Some have revenue commits, some have territory limitations. And just when you think you're getting your arms around it, they go and they change everything. So, yes, there are some challenges, but again, once you really get your arms around it, I think that, and learn how to partner in this space, I think you can do very, very well. If you focus purely on reselling the cloud service, the infrastructure as a service or the backup solution or whatever, you're realistically going to get stuck with some very small margin or very low commission rate. And I've heard time and time again over the years that it's just not worth it. It's not worth the time, for the effort required to derive such a small margin. Well, we're here to show you how to change that. So real quick, let's just go through some of the major cloud services types. There are others, but these are the ones we tend to talk about the most. Infrastructure as a service. This is where we're all hosting our virtual machines, in some cases containers and things like that. We have desktop as a service, or virtual desktops, or VDI, been called by many names. Backup as a service, very simple. That one's pretty straightforward and easy to sell. Some nuances, of course. Disaster recovery as a service, very different than backup as a service. You were talking about being able to have the infrastructure in place to spin up a customer in a virtualized environment in the event that their core infrastructure is not available. Storage as a service, a growing area of our business. We recently announced the availability of S3 AWS storage, S3 compatible storage. So we can do things like immutable backups and object locking and things like that. And then, of course, network as a service, which I think most of us are very familiar with. Put very simply, this is the cloud services stack. And I think, unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of folks tend to focus on the middle tier. They say, well, I sell cloud services. I can help you get up on Azure, or I can help you get up on AWS, or what have you. They're missing the boat a little bit on the front end, which is where the consulting takes place. And sure, it's not typically a recurring revenue opportunity, the consulting piece. However, the architecture, the design, the migration services, cutover, those are very, very important steps in making sure the customer's cloud journey is successful. Without that, your chances of success are more limited. It leads to customer frustration, and if you simply sell resources and expect the customer to do the heavy lifting on their own, unless they're a large and sophisticated company with a fairly well-staffed IT department, chances of success are fairly slim. The third piece, and arguably the fattest piece here, is the managed services component, right? So here we're talking about all of the things that we're familiar with in terms of, performance monitoring, uptime monitoring, all the way down to user support. I can't print, the computer forgot my password, or the computer lost my document, or, what have you. But all of, managed services, cloud services, and consulting, when taken together, that's really how we're going to make our money in this particular segment of the market. So we take a minute here and go through who the major players are. Over time, we really started, AWS was the early mover here. And in their original incarnation, they were there to host websites. And the name has kind of stuck, although they now go more by AWS. But the reality is that they were originally a web hosting firm. And so over time, they began to do infrastructure as a service as well. And obviously, unless you've been under a rock, you've seen how that market has absolutely exploded over the last decade and a half. Much initially to the chagrin of Microsoft, but they finally bit the bullet and jumped in and created their Azure service. And that has matured now to the point where Microsoft is not really interested in selling on-premise solutions anymore. All you have to do is take a look at their certification programs, and everything is focused around Azure. A lot of the newer folks, younger engineers that we're seeing in the industry, have no exposure to things like Active Directory, on-premise Exchange, and a lot of the things that many of our customers are still using, believe it or not. So Microsoft's focus is clearly on the Azure side, and they are all in on the platform. Interesting statistic about Microsoft Azure, by the way, I guess about 18 months ago, they quietly announced that for the first time they crossed the 50-50 mark, where more than 50% of the virtual machines running in the Azure environment do not run a Microsoft operating system. They run, typically some incarnation of Linux, or in some cases like a BSD Unix. But interestingly enough, so they've embraced the full ecosystem, not just the Microsoft operating systems on the Azure side. Google, again, another latecomer to the market. They've notoriously lost money on their cloud platform, GCP. They're in it, I think, and I believe that they're there because they believe they have to be there to cover off their options in the future. There are some pros and cons to their platform. This is probably out of scope for this and maybe a little more technical than I think any of us really want to get. But GCP is definitely an option. And then the stalking horse, I guess, of the bunch has been Oracle Cloud. So very quietly, Oracle has started to make its presence known. We're starting to see vendor solutions that run not on AWS or Azure, but run natively on Oracle Cloud. So keep them in mind. Anybody with any history in this particular space knows their partner programs are no joyride and can be very challenging. But nonetheless, they are a serious competitor at this point. Now, what's been very interesting is that as the cloud hosting market has started to evolve, a whole slew of alternatives have developed. And on this list, I pulled out a few. We've got IBM Cloud, which used to be SoftLayer, if those of you may remember, DigitalOcean, Rackspace, who, interestingly enough, has now also started to focus on reselling Azure and AWS. OVH Cloud, which got its origins as the VMware prior to Broadcom's acquisition of VMware. VMware had their own cloud hosting platform that was, the core of that became OVH Cloud. And then, of course, there's us, C3 Complete. There are numerous others out here. Each of the folks on this screen take a different approach to how they do cloud hosting. Here internally, we are still based on the VMware platform, the full stack. Some of the others are more focused on, some of the open source solutions, Rackspace notably, IBM as well. So it really depends on what the customer's needs are and what they can accommodate, and what the particular cloud provider can accommodate or offer. But the key here is that, these five and the many others that exist in the market can provide typically 95% of the capabilities of an Azure or an AWS. And they're little known because they don't have the marketing prowess, the multi-billion-dollar global presence, or what have you. So, however, they're very, very viable options for your customer base, and I would argue in most cases more appropriate than even some of the larger ones. I happen to have a very good friend of mine that owns a large medical software company. Their monthly spend with Amazon is in excess of $1 million. And it took them $1 million in monthly revenue before they had their own dedicated account rep. So it's just something to think about. So let's dive in a little bit to Microsoft's Azure program. So when we talk about reselling Azure, generally speaking, it is sold through Microsoft CSP or Cloud Service Provider program. It's been called several different things over the years. I would argue that someone who has full and complete knowledge of all of Microsoft's partnership programs probably has more retained knowledge than the average PhD. And I say that jokingly because their programs are constantly changing. And when we talk about a moving target, we're talking about Microsoft. But generally speaking, they fall into two tiers. Right? Tier one are the direct partners. These are folks who are transacting directly with Microsoft. And in that case, we have a lot of our distributors, if we're familiar, Ingram Micro, TD SYNNEX, PAX8, D&H, as well as some of the larger, IT services companies throughout the world. These folks earn higher margins and typically resell to the tier two or indirect partners. Now, an interesting requirement here is that you must have a minimum of $1 million of trailing 12-month revenue, even to apply to the tier one program. That's a recent change, by the way. It used to be about $6,000, if I recall. And as of October of this year, it will be 1 million. Microsoft's not taking any new tier one direct partners until this fall. And it also requires partners provide, tier one, level one support, meaning, and you'll be graded on that support, by the way. So if your support falls below a certain threshold in terms of, scores, you can lose your tier one partnership status with Microsoft. Tier two, indirect partners, locally known as everybody else. So just recently, in the last 2 years, Microsoft has moved away from a true commission type model to a partner earned credit model. And it's a very interesting approach. So in order to earn credits on a particular customer, the partner has to maintain admin rights over the customer's tenant. Now you can, delegate admin rights to that customer or you can delegate, contributor rights or what have you. But if you delegate admin rights to the customer, and they remove you're also removed from your earnings potential. This is not a big money maker. Earnings typically fall in the 4 to 15% range. Of course, there are exceptions. There are incentives every now and then that can help you boost those percentages. But if you talk to the market, most will tell you that on Azure infrastructure, and I would also lump in the O365 and 365 stuff. Most are earning mid to upper single digits. Now, to maximize your Microsoft earnings, specifically on Azure, we need to become a Microsoft Solutions Partner for Infrastructure. So this is a point-based program that they've created, and you must attain about a minimum of 70 points. And there are a plethora of ways that you can earn those points, but at a minimum, you must earn 1 or more points in each of the 5 areas, those being performance, scaling with intermediate certifications, also with advanced certifications, usage growth. So if your usage begins to flatline, no good. If you have lower customer satisfaction scores on your deployments, not good. So that is all taken into consideration. Your point score can go up or down over time. And you can, if you dip below the 70-point level, you can lose your authorization here. Now, interestingly, I called out 2 certifications because I think they're pretty important. One is Azure Admin Associate. Pretty straightforward, easy to attain. But the 2 solutions architecture experts certifications that are required, much more difficult, require a higher level of engineer. So again, taken as a whole, this particular program I think is realistically targeted at larger partners only. Before we jump into AWS, I should add that even with everything discussed on the prior slide, for a larger partner with those engineering resources and technical sales resources and regular sales resources, the additional margin earned is typically in the 4 to 10% range. So we're not talking about going from 6 to 25. We're talking about going from 6 to 10 or 6 to 12. So again, we have to collectively find other ways that we're going to make money selling this stuff. Now, AWS, very similar structure to Microsoft. It's generally a 2-tier program. Tier 1, they refer to as AWS distributors. And again, you've got some familiar names here like Ingram Micro, TD SYNNEX, Pax8. There are a couple that are Tier 1 with AWS, but not Azure and vice versa. I didn't think it was appropriate to list everybody here or everybody to death, but Tier 1, obviously, again, you're going to earn higher margins. But in AWS's case, they require that you have a dedicated consulting practice. And interestingly enough, they also require that you have an established reseller network. And there's not too many channel partners that I know of that have an established reseller network. They may have 4 or 5 folks that refer up through them, but in the eyes of AWS, they're thinking more along the lines of someone like Ingram or TD SYNNEX or a TSD, master agent type organization that has hundreds or thousands of resellers that are actively transacting business. So again, generally a very heavy lift to even consider getting into the tier 1 AWS program. So once again, we have tier 2, which is where everyone else generally falls. In terms of AWS earning potential, they openly acknowledge this is a low margin, low commission proposition. Their position is you should be making your money on consulting and managed services, and we're going to give you a little taste, for reselling our platform in lieu of reselling someone else's platform. They're not heavily incentivized because everyone knows who AWS is, and a savvy enterprise can go directly to AWS and acquire their infrastructure, same as they can with Microsoft, without the involvement of a partner. So there are some incentives here, PGD and POD. Those are the growth and origination discounts, origination obviously being sales. But even when all the dust settles, once again, most resellers here are earning the mid-single digits reselling AWS infrastructure. Without getting too deep into the nuances of Google or Oracle's programs, I just want to say that they're basically similar to the arrangements that Microsoft and AWS have. Both of them very openly attempt to shift the focus away from earning based on reselling their platform to earning based on consulting services up front in terms of getting them in, and then managing the ultimate solution once the customer is on their platform. The average margin for both platforms tends to be in the 8 to 9% range. And then we have our alternatives. And we talked a little bit about these. I picked the same 5. Again, there are many others. But what's different here is generally healthier margins. We're talking between 10 and 25% in some cases. There's a lower barrier to entry. Most don't require significant training or marketing commitments or technical sales resources. They're there. Their folks are there to help you bring and sell capacity within their environment. Now, I will argue and have argued many times that the big cloud alternative providers generally have a performance and flexibility advantage over the folks like AWS and Microsoft. And we see this because we also resell AWS and Microsoft. So we have pretty good understanding of what's happening behind the scenes. For example, it's not uncommon for specific applications or virtual machine types to require 50, 75, 100% more RAM or CPU resources in an Azure, I'll pick on Microsoft, in an Azure environment than it would in a VMware powered environment, for example. And that's borne out, by the way, if you take a look at some of the technical requirements for virtual appliances from folks like Palo Alto, Fortinet, and folks like that, and you start to look at what the throughput and performance capabilities are on AWS or Azure or VMware ESXi or an ESXi hosting or OpenStack, for example, and there are clear differences. And so when a customer looks, and we've worked a couple cases like this, and they say, "Oh gosh, I can move this infrastructure stack over to Azure, and I'm going to save 20% on my monthly spend." But what they're mistakenly doing is they're going like for like on CPU They're going like for like on disk. And they're not taking into account any of the underlying hidden fees for ingress, egress, um, disk I/O, CPU utilization penalties, and all this other stuff that happens behind the scenes with Azure and AWS. So typically, the big cloud folks say, if you're getting a CPU core, it's yours. Use it. You want to use it 100%, go for it. If you're acquiring 2 terabytes of disk and you want to pound that disk, go for it. We're not going to bill you more because there's high disk utilization. So again, there are some inherent performance and flexibility advantages with big cloud that you're not going to get from the larger cloud service providers. Talked a little bit about some hidden fees a minute ago, but one of the biggest things that folks face in the cloud services world is cloud sprawl. So we end up with discussions around, okay, I started at 25,000 a month. How the heck am I spending 50,000 a month 6 months later or 8 months later? So again, when you're in an environment, an alternative cloud environment, where there are less hidden fees, there's no guessing. You know exactly kind of what you're going to be paying up front. Customers really like that. We have been on both sides of that equation and have worked with customers directly. I had one in particular where the customer was billing about I think 26,000 a month with us, and determined that they were going to save about 20% by moving to AWS, which would put them around the $20,000 a month mark. And after 6 months, they were north of 50. They got up as high as 80,000 before the CIO that moved them to AWS was let go, and they're now basically waiting out the end of their reserved instance commitments. And are billing just near 100,000 a month. So they 26 to 100,000 a month purely through cloud sprawl. So I would also argue that you're going to get more customized support, more responsive support from an alternative cloud services provider, which in turn makes your customers happy, which hopefully makes them come back to you for additional services and potentially even shuffling some referrals in your direction. And the last piece here for some of the larger partners, and we have a handful that are doing it, is we offer a white label option, as do several of the others. So if you want to build your own cloud services practice and build it on your own paper, that's an option that you're going to get with an alternative provider that you're not likely to get from AWS or Azure. So when we talk about overall, what do we have to do to maximize our earnings, right? So it's a multi-tier approach. First and foremost, provide or partner for consulting services up front. There's a lot of money to be left on that gets left on the table for the partners that aren't providing these consulting services. If you don't have the ability to do it internally, do it with a partner. Do it with somebody who's willing to go to battle with you. Because if the customer is left to find, as we talked earlier, if the customer is left to find either another consulting group or attempts to go it alone, that puts all your other revenue at risk if the project is ultimately not a success. Additionally, if they're forced to find another consulting partner, there's a very good chance that that partner is also reselling a platform. That partner probably has a managed services suite. That partner probably does some other things like, hosted PBX and SD-WAN and things that we're all counting on as additional margin enhancements. So you don't want to really let the wolf into the hen house, so to speak. Again, we talk about leveraging alternative cloud providers for major services. Those are, as discussed on a previous slide, things like infrastructure, backup, DR, desktop, network, even security as a service, and some of the other things. 90+% of cloud services needs can be met by alternative cloud providers. There are always nuances, okay? For example, if a customer has a very particular use case for Power BI, they will have some infrastructure in Azure. There's just no getting around it. I say that you technically can run Power BI locally is a giant, giant pain, and I think engineered in such a way as to make you want to use Azure instead of trying to run it locally. I've noted at AWS Lambda. There's lots of other little nuances. Um, the market likes to throw around the term multi-cloud. Customers, having bits and pieces in various cloud services. The reality is the most successful deployments typically have some element of multi-cloud and hybrid cloud. So we have some elements of on-premise solutions, in some cases operational technology, things around like CNC machines or manufacturing, assembly lines and things like that that are all OT related. And then we have some IT related services that, maybe dev test environments, QA environments that are more cost effectively run locally. And then you have multi-cloud. And so the real successful deployments usually are using the best tool for the particular problem at hand. I jokingly say that, you can bash a nail into a board using a pipe wrench. But it would be a lot easier if you use a hammer. And a lot of these services work the same way. In the end, once the service is deployed or as it's being deployed, make sure that you wrap the solution in your managed services. Make sure you're providing the performance and uptime monitoring. Make sure that you're providing expense management. I think a lot of us, know what TEM is, telecom expense management. There's an even larger opportunity, I would argue, in this particular space for expense management than on the telco side. And then when all is said and done, you've solved the big problems for your customer. We can look to layer on the commodity services, things that everybody sells, like circuits and DIA and SD-WAN and, hosted voice and so on and so forth. And when you're done, you have a full solution for your customer. Your customer knows exactly who to call if something is wrong. There's no finger pointing. There's a single throat to choke. Depending upon your customer, they may also be getting a single bill. So you as the partner become more so in the power seat, if you will, in terms of the customer relationship. You keep them happy, you control the environment, and that's how you're going to maximize your earnings. That's how you're going to get additional referrals, and here's the end result, right? So if we do the things that we've been talking about here, we are going to increase our ARPU or ARPC, which is, again, average revenue per unit or average revenue per customer. It's a hugely important metric, especially if down the road you have some vision of selling your book of business or your company. That is one of the metrics that will be examined. You will have obviously significantly higher earnings as a result of taking this layered approach. The client is going to have a better experience, for reasons we've discussed, higher performance, better support, and one throat to choke in the event of some sort of an issue. As a partner, you're going to have a higher likelihood of client referrals. You're going to dramatically reduce your customer churn rates. Those of you that have been doing this a long time know that the more services you're selling into a particular client base, the stickier that client becomes. You just have to make sure that you don't have one bad apple in terms of services that can spoil the rest of your revenue, put the rest of your revenue at risk. But done properly, you end up with a very sticky customer base and customer churn dramatically reduced. Again, a lot of what we're talking about here is not commodity, right? These are specialized services built and tailored to a particular customer. And innately, you end up protecting your client from other partners. When you sell that complete solution, there's no reason for them to look elsewhere. If you're doing everything but voice, for example, and they go out and they you know, talk to a couple of voice providers, and one of them says, well, yeah, but we can also do your SD-WAN, and we've got a great relationship, and we can help you, you know, with your AWS deployment or your Azure deployment. Now all of a sudden your customer base is at risk. So again, provide that complete solution that protects your customer, you know, from invasion by other partners. And overall, when you look at the bullet points above, the end result here is increased enterprise value for your practice. So that would be the number that someone is likely to write a check for in the event that you decide to sell the business or sell the, you know, a book of business or what have you. So you know, they are going to examine a lot of what is discussed here. A buyer would, you know, what's your churn rate? How long are your customers contracted for? You know, how many services are you selling per customer? What's your ARPU or ARPC? You know, those kinds of things are all important. And you know, these the things that we've discussed today can really help, you know, make the difference between you know, in some cases double or triple the value of the practice at the end. So I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. I'm happy to stick around for any questions that may pop up.
All right, a great presentation, Rick. Just some really good stuff there. Before we jump into the Q&A, let me remind everybody that you can use that Q&A tab on the bottom of your screen if you want to ask any questions of Rick Mancinelli. Let's start out with this one, Rick. How does C3 Complete's partner-first approach, and obviously a huge deal there, how does that approach set it apart from other cloud providers?
Yeah, I think, you know, again, we take the time to understand each one of our partners, where their areas of specialty are, you know, and how we can help them to grow. In a lot of cases, and this has happened for us multiple times now, we've also created a sort of a two-way revenue share, you know, a referral pipeline, if you will, with some of our partners. So, you know, we may have an opportunity that comes in here in South Florida that we're working with a customer, and they say, gosh, I have, you know, a remote location in Buffalo. Well, I happen to have a partner that's fantastic in Buffalo. So we're going to give that business to them. So, yeah, it's how do we help the partner be, you know, as successful as possible, and that's coming from someone who spent, you know, the better part of his career as a channel partner on the other side of the fence.
All right. What types of cloud services or solutions do you find are generating the most revenue for partners?
Yeah, so there's a renewed focus on backups and on disaster recovery. Obviously, they go hand in hand with some of the cybersecurity related issues that you know, we've all been facing. Anyone that uses Ingram Micro, for example, as a distributor knows that they've been down since last week with a cyber incident. But you know, being able to recover from a cyber incident requires a solid backup, you know, plan and a solid disaster recovery plan. So those services, you know, we would typically see focus more so around, you know, finance or healthcare, or for folks like us, lucky enough to live along the Atlantic seaboard where hurricanes are a regular thing. Those were the folks that were traditionally consuming those services, and now today that's not true. You know, we're selling backup and DR services, especially DR services, into a variety of markets all throughout the United States.
All right. Now you illustrated the cloud services stack earlier with that graphic. This person wants to know why it's important to focus on the whole stack versus just like one area of it.
Yeah, so in our experience, if you're focused on a single area, you leave your customer exposed to another partner who may provide the whole stack.
Mm.
So then that particular customer, at renewal time or what have you, they're going to look and say, well, geez, do I need to really work with these two or three partners? Or can I just go to, partner XYZ, who's going to do everything for me and make my life easier? And now I'm going to go and focus on selling, whatever service or widget or, product that I sell, right? So, by keeping that door open and not covering the full stack, you leave your customer relationship partially exposed, which I think is a potential danger.
Okay, now assuming alignment with C3, this person wants to know maybe if you have any kind of quick tips for selling cloud and IT services when you encounter that pushback.
Which pushback in particular? I'm sure
I,
there's
I
several.
I'm saying in terms of like trying to make that sale.
So, yeah, our from our perspective, we've always had a philosophy that we focus on whatever the immediate need is. As I shared earlier on, we provide services across six major areas. But typically, a customer that is happy and chugging along, they are typically not out there shopping for IT services, right? There's usually some sort of qualifying event, and that qualifying event might be, my IT guy just quit and I don't know what to do. It might be, there's smoke coming out of my whole phone system, or we just got ransomware, or what have you. So our goal is really to get in, solve the immediate problem, stop the bleeding, and then really get to know the customer, work with the partner of record, and over time, we'll look to try to help our partners capture the rest of that spend. And in doing so, we can usually drive down the customer's costs. We make their lives easier, and the partners end up earning significantly more money as well. So it's really a win-win-win when you think about it.
All right. This attendee wants to know about is there what's the commission split there, and are there any other kind of limitations that they should know about?
Yeah, so the commission split is it varies. Again, I mentioned on the alternative cloud side, we are seeing commissions anywhere from 10 points all the way up to 25 points. It depends on the deal. We've had, and some of you that have been around long enough will laugh, but we've had customers come to us and say, oh gosh, that's a great proposal at 5,000 a month, but can we sell it at six? Because I know they have 6,000 to spend, right?
Mhm.
So in those cases, right now we're gonna push the commission rate way up because we haven't done anything different. But the partner has essentially earned that additional $1,000, right? So again, our goal is not to put our hands in the partner's pocket. Our goal is to put cash in the partner's pocket instead.
Okay, very good. This person wants to know, you mentioned the white labeling option, which is
Mhm.
available. They wanted more information on that. Is that something they'd be better to reach out to you directly for?
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to entertain any questions via email. Was probably the best way to get me about white labeling. Again, there's some challenges related to it, right? So you have to have billing platform, and you have to have compliance management and taxation and all that kind of fun stuff. As if you're already doing that for telco or you're doing that for other services, then it's a natural fit. If you want to dip your toe into white labeling for the first time, then there are just some things that everyone needs to be aware of, so as to keep the necessary authorities off your back.
All right. Now this person, they apologize in case they missed it, but any requirements or minimums to partner with C3?
None whatsoever.
Okay, I didn't think so. How about in terms of onboarding, training, ongoing support? Like, what kind of things can new partners expect when they join C3's program?
Yeah, so we have a regular educational program. We do it on a weekly basis. We do internal webinars. We do partner-facing webinars, and we do co-selling. So it's kind of a combination of those three. So we invite our partners to join. As the topics come up, they say, "Oh, that one looks really interesting. I'm going to join," and they'll learn some that way. But what I've found over the years, and I think others on my team would certainly agree, is that the partners that co-sell with us end up learning the most. And a lot of them who co-sell in the beginning don't really need us so much after a year or two, because it starts to stick, right? So, it's sort of a learn by doing. So it's a, multi-pronged approach. But certainly there to support the partner and their success however we can.
Okay. Now this person wants to know, in terms of the partners again, any other tools or resources that C3 provides that they should know about?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the six main pillars, if you would, areas in terms of service areas. So, whatever we have in our portfolio that can fill gaps in our partners' portfolios, and allow them to be better positioned to sell a complete solution, I think that's really where we excel. We really enjoy the most challenging circumstances. I have a guy on my team that refers to them as the burnt pretzels. So we'll take your burnt pretzels and we'll make them work. And so we really enjoy, hopefully it comes through, but we really enjoy what we do. And you know, uh, bring us your most difficult scenarios, and we'll make them work.
All right. And just a reminder, guys, that the Q&A tab there at the bottom of the screen, that's how you get in touch with us if you want to ask any questions of Rick. Just a couple more, and then we can get out of here. This person wants to know, Rick, the biggest obstacles that you find that your partners face. What are the biggest obstacles?
So on the alternative cloud side, we do run into those situations where you have a CIO or a CTO who is, born and raised, if you will, on AWS, or born and raised on Azure, and that's all they know. So in cases like that, we have to be a little more, sensitive to their knowledge base, and it becomes as much of an educational process as a selling process, right? So, and as I mentioned, in some cases, there are particular customers that are better off, frankly, in AWS or Azure, right? And then we can try to make up our margin elsewhere. But yeah, those are probably the biggest objections we get is, well, why should I put all my eggs in your basket when I can, put them in Amazon's basket or Microsoft's basket. And those are it's a reasonable concern, right? But I will point out that the big guys and the little guys are equally out there and exposed to the bad actors of the world. So they're not immune to downtime, and it's just there's no guarantee, and I think there's this inherent belief that, well, if I choose Azure for my web services provider, or AWS, I'm just not going to have any downtime, and it's always going to work. And that's simply not the case. You need to spend only 5 minutes on Google looking at major cloud outages over the last 5 years, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So that's the single biggest objection that we have to overcome.
Okay, and kind of a general question, but I think it's a great way to close it out, Rick. How
Sure.
does partnering with C3 help increase customer retention and long-term contract value? Like, what are some of the ways that the partnership helps that?
Yeah, so again, it's for us, it's about helping our partners really deliver that complete solution, right? So when a partner can deliver a complete solution to their client now has one phone number to call. They don't have to decide or try to figure out, well, geez, is it a network issue? Is it a device issue? Is it did one of the engineers fat finger a route somewhere? It's just all of that goes away. They know that if something doesn't work, they have one phone number to call, right? And so that's the experience that we help our partners deliver to their clients. And that experience, it's hard to, really put your finger on it, or try to talk about it in tangible terms. But that's something people feel inside. And when renewal time comes up, you've established that relationship and that trust. your customers aren't going to go anywhere.
All right. So that's going to do it for today's webinar. Thank you, Rick Mancinelli, the founder and the CEO of C3 Complete. Just a tremendous, very, very educational session today. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you to everyone who joined. I hope to see many of you at some of the upcoming shows. If you happen to see us out there at either MSP Expo or we'll be at CVX in Arizona this fall as well. So come say hi.
And that's going to do it for the webinar. Once again, on behalf of all of us at Channel Vision and our good friends, C3 Complete, take care. Thanks for attending. Be good to one another. We'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.